Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you're at. I am Dominique Morgan, and we are Fly Nubia Money, where we teach you how to master your mindset and maximize your money. And today we have a panelist with great women and men to talk about our subject today. So we have Mr. Joe, who's a licensed therapist. We have Deborah, who is a YouTuber that's always here. And then we have Dr. Angeline Dean, who is a systems disruptor, and we have Miss Williams Renee. So we have an interesting topic today. So there was a recent video that went viral stating that watching children isn't the hardest job, and there are harder jobs out there. That may be true, but the real question isn't about difficulty, it's about cost. If caregiving isn't considered hard, why does it often cost women their money, their career growth, and long-term financial security? Today, we're going to be talking about money, value, and what happens when caregiving is treated like it doesn't count. So guys, what are your thoughts? Deborah, what are your thoughts about this subject today?
Caregiving is expensive, but she thought out, well planned when you're going to pick a provider for your child, because your children are very precious. So we need to make sure that, we pick the right people to watch our children. So it can be costly, but it needs to be planned out well.
I like that. For me, I never wanted to necessarily be a stay-at-home mom. I wanted the flexibility to be available. So like when my kids got sick and, they had extracurricular activities or they had things at school, but I never had that desire to stay at home because I really understand what all goes into staying at home. It's a big deal. I applaud women that stay at home full time, because it's not just you being at home, you're making a sacrifice. So Joe, from a male's perspective, what are your thoughts?
Just from a human perspective, I feel like caregiving it comes with a lot of emotional labor. I think when we start to try to put financial numbers on it and minimize what a caregiver is doing in a home, we already losing. We're already in an unhealthy relationship. So from my perspective, I've seen this up close. I've seen this in session. So I kind of know where it goes. So my thoughts are we have to value all the labor that gets put into a marriage, not just not the job labor.
Yeah, I like that. Renee, what's your thoughts? We can't hear you.
I have to say ditto to both Deborah and Joe this morning. They're right on point. You can't put a value about money or value to the work that women put in to their children. It's really with the emotional toil that they go through, mothers, as making sure that their children are emotionally stable and ready to meet the world accomplished, confident, and just being there. So that takes a lot, and I think that we should not have to put money on it. But sometimes I can understand when women want to let men know or their husbands know that, look, this is how much it costs. So in addition to what else I'm doing, just be cognizant of what I am doing and value me appropriately that I'm doing for our children.
Yeah, I agree with that. What about you, Dr. Angeline?
I agree with everything has been said. Basically, like what we're all saying is it's an investment. It's a cost. It's investment. And as Joe said, it is labor. But I also want to give a shout out to those stay-at-home dads now. I know a couple of fathers who are staying home, not just mothers, who are picking up the weight of what is needed in the households as well.
Yeah, that's so true. I think we have a quick video, so we're going to look at this video and then we're going to come back and we're going to discuss the video.
It's a hard job. And we've even created a culture. Motherhood is the hardest job in the whole world. And this Mother's Day, remember that mom is the hardest job. We've got people gassed up on this idea that like, oh my God, the hardest job in the world is being a mom. And it's like, guys, it's not. It's not. It's not the hardest job in the world. It's an incredibly important job. You could make the case that it's the most important job in the world for sure. But it's the most physically taxing, incredibly. And by the way, it's transient. You're telling me a 2-year-old and an 8-year-old, it's the same gig? No, I had 2 kids. Trust me, 2, really hands-on, really challenging. 8, still hands-on, but in a very different way. 18, not really that hard anymore. Psychologically, maybe you have to be there in different ways and discipline in different ways, but like the hands-on part of it, it's not as difficult. Not a pop.
So let's talk about this. This is really, really interesting to hear him say it from his perspective. So I do have a friend that's a stay-at-home mom, and there's a lot that goes in. It's like nonstop. Like she's always, and yes, he's young, and yes, things change over the years. So you may not have to dress your children at 8, but your children still need you and they demand a lot from you. So to say that it's, just to be so nonchalant, like it's not a big deal and staying at home is nothing. It's a lot that goes into staying at home, and it's a lot of developing and nurturing and love that it's so impactful over the years. So Joe, what's your thoughts about that video?
My bad, John. I listened to that, and I, as a therapist, don't believe that there should be any level of scorekeeping involved in a relationship or a marriage. So when I hear that, I'm thinking to myself, yes, motherhood is hard, but we have an appreciation for every role that's inside of a household. Everybody's playing a role. We got to appreciate everybody's role. So what is the father doing? Fatherhood is also difficult. It's not an easy role. And motherhood sometimes also comes with economic duties and economic weight. We have to be mothers and we have to be providers. We have to be fathers and we have to be providers. I think that just minimizes way too much without an understanding of each individual relationship and how roles are played out. And when you say stuff like that, you're just trying to get a response out of women, because that's crazy.
So I have another question for you, Joe. So have you, I'm not sure if you're married or not, but have you, your wife or your spouse been able to stay at home, and what does that look like for your household?
We both had to play that role. I've been married 18 years. My kids are now almost grown, but there's definitely been some times where I had to sit down. And in the beginning of our marriage, she had to sit down, and neither one of those felt easy for either one of us. I mean, because of, especially for Black men, because of the way that we are raised and what in the pressures of society put on us about performance, it did show up a little differently in me, because I do feel like even though I'm doing all these things at home, I'm cooking and cleaning and doing all these things, there's still an expectation that I should be out trying to find work, or there's like this isn't enough. So a man that sits at home can sometimes be viewed kind of as a loser. So
Yeah.
so there's different expectations, but the labor is the labor, like I said in the beginning.
Yeah. And I will agree with you on that. When you think about a man staying at home versus a woman, sometimes, I've seen it where it's more beneficial for the man to stay at home because the wife is making a lot of money. And I think that we have to, going back to what Joe says, we have to get rid of the noise and we have to do what's best for our family, as opposed to what the societal norms are, which sometimes just don't make sense, and create this conflict and create this division and create this war that's unnecessary. If we're doing what's in the best interest for our family and our children, then it doesn't matter what anybody else has to say. So, Dr. Angeline, have you ever been a stay-at-home mom, and what are your thoughts about the video?
So I don't have kids, but I've raised 3 teens in my home,
Okay.
and while working from home. So I kind of understand what that stay at home was like. I still had to go shopping. I still had to clean. I still had to do the laundry. I still had to go to their games. I still had to make sure that their homework and stuff was done. Their needs were done and were handled and taken care of. So it is labor, right? I think the society only pretty much respects what is valued as labor. This is more valued, I think, as love, right? Termed as love, or this is what you're supposed to do, that type of thing. But piggybacking off of Joe, I remember one time when my mom, both my parents were making decent money, and my dad's company closed all of a sudden, and he had been there for years. And as a Black man, like Joe said, I remember seeing the weight of that on my dad. And every day he had all these newspapers and this and this and this, looking for all of these things. And I remember when my mom, and I always, this is very dear to me, when my mom said, like, we're in this together. It's a partnership. I don't even want you looking at the paper for a month. Go rest, take care of you. We planned in case things happened. Now you might have to pick up some of the slack if the kids need something. I can't just come home, or now I can stay at work. So to hear that video, I sure wouldn't want to be married to him. So yeah.
Yeah. Deborah, what about you? Have you stayed at home?
I've had the opportunity to stay at home. I have 2 children, and I did have the opportunity to stay at home with my first and my second, actually, and it was from ages 1 to 3 with my son, and about ages 1 to 4 with my daughter. And it was a blessing. It was a real blessing. I just to see them, in those formative years of, growing up and walking and talking and, doing all of the preschool things, So I cherished those moments. I was very grateful to be able to have that opportunity to do that before, I had to send them to school. And I also chose to work close by where their schools were located. So that way I was able to get to them if emergencies arise. I could get programs at the school. So it was a planning process, and, I was very grateful to be able to do that.
Nice. And Renee, what about you? We can't hear you.
Today. For the most part, I was a single mom, and I worked a lot. However, because I traveled a lot, I made sure I was able to be flexible and work around my work for anything he had, like school projects and things like that. I never missed, but I was out there.
Okay, nice. So I think we have another video coming up.
She said it. Listen, I watched the clip. She said it was not a privilege.
It's not.
The ability to exist without having to provide for yourself. Explain to me how that is not a privilege.
It's not leisure, because there's times where I was parenting.
But you still want to be treated as an adult. How is it not a privilege to not fulfill the requirements of being an adult, but to still be treated as an adult?
You're not saying what I'm saying. What's not being an adult? Tell me what's not being an adult.
You're not taking care of yourself. You're taking care of the children, and you're taking care of the home. That man is taking care of you.
But you know what is a luxury? You getting to wake up in the morning and leave and take care of all of that stuff and go to work and make money because you have someone who's holding it down at home. Guess what? I personally can't go to work 24/7 and work all these long shifts because I have have that.
I think
now, if you had to come home, pick up the kids and take care of everything on your own, you probably can't make as much money as you're making, because now you got a schedule to maintain and you got to make sure those kids is picked up. And now schedules are different. So kids got to get picked up at different times. They can't even stay till 3 p.m. no more. And then on another note, you're too tired to feed them properly. They don't even get the proper nutrients because you got to work and you got to take care of that, and you got to stop and do your laundry. You got to stop and go grocery shopping. And you got to just sweating while driving.
when you said being a housewife is not a privilege, I want to know, how is that not a privilege when a man having a good woman and a good wife is a privilege?
I think you're taking it literal, though. She didn't say.
How can I not? How can I not take it literal?
The thing
That's interesting. She was definitely triggered by what he was saying, but I think this is just another way to create conflict, right? Men versus women, and it's really no conflict. I believe that it is a privilege, and I feel like it's a job. It is a privilege to be able to stay at home if you choose to stay at home, and it is a lot of work that goes into it. So just a quick question that I have, who do you guys think benefits the most from someone staying at home? Renee, I'll start with you.
I like this question. I believe that the person that stays at home, is holding down the person that is working. So the person that is working is definitely benefiting, because if you have children, and you want your children to have a stable, confident feeling inside and know that they're loved and appreciated as well, then you're really holding it down for that person that's out there working. So, yeah.
Yeah. I personally think that the children ultimately benefit from one parent staying at home and one parent working. So when we're thinking about this and everybody is arguing, and then what happens is we bring these tensions home. So now something that is very beneficial to the children can be something that can be stressful for the children, because now the parents are in conflict, and they're in conflict based on other people's opinion, not necessarily what their household deems best for them. Dr. Angeline, what are your thoughts?
I was writing down some things while I was thinking about it. I think everybody benefits except the person staying at home in some ways, right? That they benefit because they, as Deborah said, they get to see their children and be there for their children at all times. But I think when I look at it, right, the state benefits because that's less investment in childcare. The household benefits because it's free labor. The employers benefit as well, because now the person who's staying at home is losing wages, possible promotions, possible retirement money, all those types of things. So depending on how you look at it, I still think everybody benefits, but the person staying at home might be losing a little bit more, depending on how you look at it.
Okay, and why do you think they may be losing a little more?
Only because if you had a job and you had all of these opportunities for promotions, opportunities for investments, opportunities for retirement, right? And especially if you don't have a plan in your house, if you want to go back to work, and if you got some of these husbands that we're listening to, you better have a plan, or you better have a plan, an exit plan. And then if you do, or possibly need an exit plan, do you have that money? Because now you're staying at home. That might be, these guys remind me of the type of guys that would be like, this is your money, this is our money, like possibly like hit you off with money, stuff like that. That's the type. That's why I'm saying possibly it depends on the situation.
Okay.
That's why I'm thinking that way.
Okay.
After listening to these videos. Yeah.
Okay. So this question is for you, Joe. So it's kind of, the same, but what I hear, I know a few stay-at-home dads that feel like, they don't have a problem with their wife staying at home, but they have some kind of, regret because they miss out on a whole lot. Like I have an uncle that for his job, he has to travel a whole lot. His wife is able to stay at home, but he does not get to, reap the benefits in terms of participating. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that if you fall into a role by expectation instead of by choice, then anyone is going to struggle. And I don't think that, there's like a winner, like a universal winner in this setup. It seems like whoever is going to benefit, it really more depends on the role you want to play and the life you're trying to build, and the point made about if we're already thinking about exit strategies and stuff, it's a whole different conversation, and we in a whole another level of trouble. But if we're in a loving marriage and we've decided that you're going to do this and you're going to do this, then did you choose those roles, or are you just doing that because you're expected to do it? And some people genuinely love or want to be caregivers, and they thrive in those roles, and they feel fulfillment in those roles. And other people want to be in the workforce, and they want to be building financially and professionally. So if you two of those two people meet up, they each need each other in order to make, their dreams come true or the fulfillment come true. So the problem is when one role is like automatically assumed to be easier or more valuable, but both positions come with benefits and both come with sacrifices. And the key is the intentional choice and mutual respect. That has to be involved. Basically, there really is no winner when one person's sacrifice is invisible. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Deborah, what are your thoughts?
Plan, and more planning. That definitely has to be the first and the most important thing that you do even before you have the children, because like you all have said, losing the wages, losing yourself, people sit outside in their cars and scroll before they go in the house to them children. So
Yeah.
you just plan and make sure that you have all your ducks in a row when it comes to having the children. How are we gonna take care of them? What's your idea on raising children? You got to be on the same playing field. And these influencers are making it look like staying at home is like golden, from their video contents. We got this going on. They're putting themselves first. They're getting up early, working out, doing affirmations, reading the Bible, whatever it is to help you to get your spirit man right before you start dealing with your children, making those lunches, homeschooling, or whatever it is. They are doing it a different way, which makes it seem like it's doable. You just have to have a good plan. That's all. And be on the same plan together.
Okay. Yeah, I've seen a lot of YouTubers lately that are, highlighting staying at home and what that looks like for their family. And it's pretty interesting. Like they have like a whole system in place. And like you said, the meditation, and it's pretty cool. Renee, what about you? What are your thoughts?
Well, from a single mom perspective, you definitely you still have to plan. You still have to plan how, well, I was for a while, and then I had an opportunity to be with my son for a while, and it was beautiful. But at the same time, I did lose wages, and I did have to sacrifice that. But that was something that I was willing to do to ensure that he was okay, because there's certain critical age points, which I'm sure Joe and the therapist here online can say that, that you definitely have to be there for them at certain points. So when he became, I believe, 13, 14, he started to come acting a little bit weird. So, I knew that I had to take that time off for a couple of years to really plan to be with him. And so planning is crucial. And I did do that. I look forward ahead, understanding those critical years. And then I took that time off to be with him.
Okay, nice. So I think we have another quick video.
To all the stay-at-home moms, I feel like you're lying. Because of what I get to do for work, I can still stay home and pay all the bills. And my wife will have to go to work to make her money. And I have a 1-year-old daughter. So I'll stay at home and I'll take care of my daughter. And while I'm taking care of my 1-year-old daughter, I can give her 3 meals a day, change her on time, get her into her naps, play time, arts and crafts time, and still make sure the entire place is clean. And I can clean the whole apartment while watching her before 12 or 1 o'clock. And yes, I know an apartment is different than a home, but I have a 2,300 square foot apartment, so it's not tiny. But I do know that I can just be ignorant to a lot of people's situations. So can someone please tell me, when does being a stay-at-home mom become hard?
So it's not the easiest thing, but it's not the hardest thing either. The way how females come on the internet and they all cry and they say, I can't do this. Like, I'm sitting on the couch. Sometimes I have time to do this. It's not that hard.
So I think we're getting it from both ends. So we have some men that are saying it's not that hard, some women saying it's not that hard. And again, I think that we have to like look at things in totality, right? What works for that person? Maybe again, having the conversation, maybe the man can stay at home, and it just depends on what works for your family. I have another question that I want to ask. What conversations do you think we should be having prior to one person staying at home? So for me, I think that we have to like really map out what this looks like. Maybe there's a period of time that we're going to stay at home, right? Maybe I'm going to stay at home from the ages of 1 through 5. Maybe he's going to stay at home. Maybe it's more beneficial for him to stay at home. And we're having those discussions. Also, what does finances look like? Because yes, we're a team and we're together. But I think that we should, to give some independence to whoever's staying at home, maybe we're creating a retirement savings for that person. Maybe we're going to come up with what that allowance looks like. But I think that we should be having those detailed conversations. Joe, what are your thoughts? What conversations do you think should be had prior to the male or the female deciding to stay at home?
Well, yeah, I think you're right. I think we should be having real conversations about what the role will cost and what, if anything, will it change. And not just financially, but we need to talk about what it's going to do to us emotionally and relationally. We need to talk about how long this arrangement is going to be, for how much money will be shared. We need to talk about savings, retirement, how all this is going to be handled. That's what healthy relationships look like. That's what we talk about in healthy relationships. What happens if the relationship ends, and both people will still feel, are both people going to still feel valued and supported? And a lot of the conflict that I see in the sessions that I do is it doesn't come from who's playing what role. It comes from all the unspoken expectations and kind of, not having those conversations about, what's next. And when you have those expectations, people don't want to have those conversations up front because they're afraid of losing what they already got. So when we start having those conversations, we start healing a lot of things and having some understanding about who we sharing a life with.
Okay, that's good. Dr. Angeline, what's your thoughts?
I totally agree with everything that Joe said. Same thing, savings, what are our goals, retirement plan. Same thing he said as far as a timeline and then a reentry plan, like how long, like was said before. Emergency fund access, right? Are we gonna, how much money do we want to have set aside maybe prior as an emergency fund? And even this thing with our money versus your money, like all of those things have to be a conversation. And I know people are saying if there's a healthy relationship, but sometimes in the midst of those healthy relationships, stuff happens, right? All of a sudden, people get funny when they think that you're not doing or putting or contributing. I've seen it happen with some of my own friends. So even some of those conversations are paramount.
I like that. Renee, what are your thoughts?
It's number one thing, communication throughout the whole from the beginning when you have those endorphins and you're in love or whatever that is at that point. Then when things start getting hard, it's always communication, and then putting in plans around those communications and necessary things. So everyone on here is on point with making sure that we have plans in place and that we are communicating it.
Okay. Deborah?
Yes, definitely the planning process. No man left behind when you're, going through these types of situations. And just to be healthy and healed, going through this, because someone could feel traumatized while, being at home. So you want everybody to be healthy, the parents, the children. You want them to have a happy life. You don't want to hear the horror stories later. As children are now doing, they didn't like how you parent them and all those type of things. So you want to just make sure you have a great plan in place.
I like that. So I'm gonna throw something else out there. Let's and I can speak to this because I come from a family that has a special needs child. What happens when you have a special needs child? So for us, I know how complicated it was. So I had a brother. I really believe that he was autistic, but at that time it wasn't like popular. So he also has seizures. So and I'm talking about on a daily basis, all the time. He was in the hospital all the time. So what are your thoughts? Like for us, it was a lot. It was overwhelming for parents, and my parents were separated, but that's a whole lot. What are your thoughts? And I'm gonna let you guys answer freely, whoever wants to answer first. What are your thoughts in terms of, yes, the children are okay, but what if you have a special needs child? What are the thoughts? What are your thoughts?
I'll just stay with what I've been saying. Like we have to make sure that we're having these conversations about what these roles look like, who's expected to do what. If you're not talking about these things, you're going to have conflict, and no matter what the topic is in your relationship, it's all required. We want healthy relationships. I need to ask the big questions. I need to ask the big questions of you. What do you need? What are you feeling? What is bothering you? What is, I can't just expect, because we are married now, that you just got to go through life performing in roles that you don't necessarily want to be in. You got to talk, so it doesn't matter, special needs, not special, whatever the situation is, conversation needs to be had.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest piece that we miss across the board. Even when a person is seeming to be overwhelmed, having that conversation to say, hey, I'm overwhelmed, or I no longer want to be a stay-at-home mom, or even for the father, I no longer want you to stay at home. Maybe financially it's becoming a whole lot. And just having those conversations are important. Deborah, I'm gonna ask you that questions to you.
Having a special needs child, you definitely have to have a special plan in place, because it's more work to be done depending on the child's needs. I do know, I know from, family experience as well. And then I'm talking about from like 70s, 80s, 90s. You didn't have access to all the resources that you have now. Sometimes the child stayed at home mostly. You didn't have all of the outsourcing where you could send them to like an activity place where you got a break. So the parents or caregivers always had the child 24/7. And that's a lot of wear and tear. I know a couple right now that their son is older, and they're finding they're getting older, the son's getting older, and he still has the needs. So they're trying to find, the things for their son, activities, places he can go. He goes to a day program. But as you get older, as that parent, you have to prepare and plan. If I'm not here, who's going to take care of that child? You have to put those plans into place, and you have to do it sooner than you think. So, I'm glad that they have more resources now, because before, back in the day, you just had the child at home, you made it work, and, it was like rolling dice. I just wish for the best thing to happen, So, yeah.
Yeah. Because when you have a child that has special needs, they may never leave you. So whereas you have a child that doesn't, they meet these milestones and they leave. And so, it's important again to have those conversations and put things in place to protect the child as well. Dr. Angeline, what are your thoughts?
Again, so I also know that it's good to also have that backup plan, right? Because we do go through some of this in my family, and so we have that backup plan in place, and we also have a plan in place to give someone a break, as Deborah has said, to give that caregiver a break from time to time. And so I think that is critically important, just even for the mental health of the person that's taking care, who it's not a two-family home, who's taken care of, to say, okay, you know what, I got the child today. Go ahead, go do something for yourself, or they could spend the night at my house. So even with school, right? If sometimes there's been times where I've been fortunate enough to say, you know what, I'll work from home and then I'll go pick up so-and-so. You could stay at work and do what you need to do. So even not having those backup plans and having backup people in place to possibly assist you with some of your cares and needs.
Okay, Renee, your thoughts?
Dr. Angelina, she made a really good point, and that point for me, because I was in my head constantly, is about, well, what about the caregiver and getting a break? Because I definitely think that when you incorporate that time strategically, so they can really have time to have off, not just a day or two. Maybe sometimes they go on a vacation. I don't know how that you can wrap that out and wrap that into a plan, but we have to also think about our caregivers so they don't burn out, or, they get to a point where they can't be functional as possible for their children with special needs. And that will actually, help continue to heal the family.
Okay, I like that. So we have another video to share real quick.
Please.
When you are the one who has to hold a lot of things in your brain about the other people in your household, it is called invisible labor. For instance, the person who remembers when people have to go to the dentist, when people have to go to the doctor, when people have to have their checkups, when people have to, when things are due for this date, when things are due on that date, how to sign the kids up for this. And then in order to sign the kids up for this thing has to happen. And if that thing happens, then how, generally speaking, the wife/mother in a relationship has to be several steps ahead, right? And so oftentimes in our relationship currently, when you interrupt a thought, or when you interrupt me reading a book, or when you interrupt these things, I think what you sense is the frustration that I feel like I have, because I don't feel like I ever get the free time that you get, in terms of the being able to just kind of live in my head or live in your head. And I think on this issue, a lot of women were going to have my back on this, in terms of even if it's the division of labor and all of those things. But I would say that the division of labor hasn't always been that way, especially when our children were very, very small. I think things have shifted now, especially because Andrew does soccer and you love soccer. You'll jump up and take him to the soccer game in a heartbeat. Take him to this. You've got all of that because you enjoy that. You enjoy it, right?
Yeah.
But in terms of what it takes to plan the events, plan the birthday parties. We have our youngest son loves a birthday party.
He does.
That planning is by default on me. And again, all the other things, it's a ticker tape parade for women in relationships, especially when they are children. As our children have gotten older, I will say that I have done a lot to try to get over what I felt was the immediate, when they are born, typically speaking, the woman does the lion's share of the work, typically speaking. And I have admitted to being very bitter about the fact that I felt like I was immediately thrust into this role of it's all on me.
Interesting. So I am not a stay-at-home mom. I do, I work, and I've always worked since my children, were young. But even as a stay-at-home mom, I think we forget about those invisible tasks that she was talking about, making the doctor's appointments, following up with the doctor. I have a daughter now that's in college, and she called me like, Mom, can you help me make an appointment? Those things, making sure they have their school physicals, so when we're thinking about a stay-at-home mom and we're thinking about these invisible tasks, do you think that that still all should fall on that one person? Or do you guys think that, some tasks, you could still share tasks even as a stay-at-home mom with your partner that goes out and work? Joe, what are your thoughts?
Oh, wow. I really feel like in healthy households, whatever the ecosystem requires is what you do. But that's a really tough question, because if y'all have kind of made this arrangement that things are going to be this and things are going to be that, and now you're saying that, this is no longer working for you, but that's a conversation again that we got to have as a couple. We got to decide, because if I love you and if I care about you, I don't want you breaking down. I don't want you carrying all of that emotional labor alone. And that's what I talked about in the beginning of the pod, that invisible emotional labor. And most of it is the resentment comes in when the person who's carrying it just feels like whatever they're dealing with is unseen. So some of it can be solved just by that. It's not even about like picking up extra, or you doing my work and me doing your work. It's just about, sometimes, do you see me and what I'm doing? Do you see me? You think it's all about the physical task, feeding the kids and cleaning and doing all them little school runs. And oftentimes with my work, what gets missed is the mental load, the planning, like she said, and remembering everything, and like anticipating everybody's needs all the time. That gets heavy on whoever it is. Whether it mainly falls on women, and that gets heavy. So that job, you never get to clock out of that job. A lot of times when you're the person going to work, you clock out and you go home. You never, ever, ever get to clock out of being that caregiver, that stay home, or wherever. Even if you're not a stay at home mom, you never get to clock out of that either. So I think again, understanding these you have to have these talks. And I know this seems like I'm speaking German to a lot of people because they're not talking about these things, but you've got to talk about these things.
And I would agree with that. I think what happens is people just shut down and they build resentment over time because they're not having the conversations, and they're overwhelmed and they're frustrated. I got to do this. And, even if you go out and work and you have to do all these tasks, like, okay, I got to remember to do that. I got to remember, because it never ends. So those invisible tasks just keep coming and keep coming and keep coming. And so I think that is important, Joe, to have those conversations. Renee, what about you? What are your thoughts?
From from perspective as a single mom, taking all of that and having to, birthdays and all, it's very taxing from working in corporate, right? That's another conversation that as Black women have to deal with, the corporate life, and then having to come home and make sure that you're available and planning. It's exhausting. I remember at the time when I was, in a group and something, and then all I kept saying was that I'm tired. That was it. I just kept saying I'm tired. It's nothing else, because you just I was so overwhelmed with all the duties, all the mental check boxes, and then have to go into corporate every day.
Yeah, that's a lot, and that's heavy. And I also think that, we back in the day, we had community, right? We had, grandmothers that were extremely active, and, it was just different. And I think that, and I've said this before, that we have to get back to that community, because it can be overwhelming and it can be hard on a marriage. It can be hard on the children, because sometimes, just like sometimes you need a break from your children need a break from you as well. So, just saying that I'm tired and having that village to say, okay, you're tired. Where can I help you? What can I do to assist you is amazing as well. Dr. Angeline, what are your thoughts?
Basically the same as everyone else. And one of the things too, and I heard basically everybody say this, is also knowing to appreciate each other and showing each other that you appreciate, acknowledging, I see you, right? I see what's happening, because in our society, unpaid labor has been normalized, right? Especially for women. And to hear her say, to think about all the invisible labor, all this stuff is just taking me back to living when I was at home, and making me think all the more like how much more my mom did, but also how much, like Joe said, my father would see a need and he would just do it. It wasn't like, oh, that's your job, that type of thing, and I'm not going to do that, right? And so it just makes me appreciate this conversation all the more. And again, Renee said it again as well, being there to also help each other out. Again, going back to, that's my job, community, going back to community, being like a servant leader. How can I help serve? How can I help you build? Matter of fact, how about I take the kids and you and your husband go out? Right? That type of thing, where you could have a night and a day and an evening to yourself, just shut down and you guys enjoy yourself. So yeah, that was a good one with all that invisible labor. I didn't even think about that or take that into consideration, how much goes into that, the planning, the doctor's office, the dentist's office, the eyeglass appointments, all of those type of things that also play into the role. But again, as we've all said, it has to be communication.
Yeah.
And without that, everything's going to fall.
Yeah. The extracurricular activities, getting them to the extracurricular activities. There is a lot that goes into that. Renee, Deborah, what are your thoughts?
The plan, of course, but even having like a checkboard list, that helps too. By saying like, doctor appointments have to be called. That way the person visibly sees what needs to be taken care of. And then maybe they perhaps can, take some of the load. Okay, did you get to do this, this, and this? If you didn't, then, I can take that, I can take those chores on. So having a checkboard list would be good, where it's visible, and see it. And then they can just jump in and help. Well, I made the phone calls, or I made the appointments. That way, all the weight is on person, So there's so many ways now that, we can make it visible, even, without even communicating it, but just having it up on a board, even tasks and that need to be picked up. If the other person's outside the home, they can go pick up the groceries, or you can place the order and have it delivered. So there's so many things now that we have that's accessible to help take the weight and burden off of our shoulders while we're being caregivers. So, yeah.
Yeah, I like that. One thing that I know that I do a lot is just making sure that I put everything on the calendar, so we all see what's going on, including the children, so you can have an idea. And I've tapped into the groceries. I love the grocery delivery. It is, you can still make your meals and you don't have to spend the time in the grocery store. So I think we have one more video, and then we're going to have our final thoughts.
Being a single mother is not hard. Being a stay-at-home wife is not hard. Because you know why? Because if it was so difficult to do, millions and billions of people wouldn't be able to do it. Men wouldn't be able to do it. You know what's hard? Being a doctor. You know what's hard? Being a scientist. You know what's hard? working offshore on an oil rig to where you don't see your family for 3 weeks at a time. That's hard. So therefore, for something to be difficult and hard and challenging, most people should not be able to do it. Millions of single mothers are out there. Millions of stay-at-home wives are out there. And they are doing it just fine.
Interesting. Interesting. So if everybody can just give me your final thoughts and also let everybody know where they can find you. I'm gonna start with you, Joe.
Well, man, that was crazy what he just said. And I just, all these videos just keep trying to like rank pain and rank effort and rank difficulty. It's all the wrong lens, and it's not coming from a healthy place. Yes, being a doctor is hard, okay, but being a stay-at-home mom is hard in a lot of different ways, and the different roles that you have to play, they bring stress. They bring different parts of the human system, you know. So these videos they're nuts, and families aren't built on comparisons. Like I keep trying to say, they're built on ecosystems. Every role that keeps a household healthy has value. You have to remember that. So whether it's bringing home income, whether it's providing care, whatever it is, each one of those roles carries an invisible emotional load. All of them do. So when you stop competing about whose job is harder and start appreciating and protecting every single role, that is when the family is going to become healthier. That's when the relationship's going to become healthier. And not only emotionally but also financially. My website is right there underneath me, realuconsulting.com. Reach out to me whenever you need. All my information to all my social medias is right there. It was a pleasure being here with y'all today.
Thank you. Deborah?
This was a great conversation, a much needed conversation. Staying at home, the person who stays at home, they're actually an engineer. You're engineering your household, you're engineering the things you need to do for your children. I just gave y'all a promotion, those who stay at home. So don't look at it as being labor not valued. And we also need our village. We need our village to help us stay healthy, mentally, spiritually, physically, and financially. This was a great conversation today. My name is Deborah E. Williams. You can find me on YouTube as Deborah Will Win. Thank you.
Okay, Renee?
It all goes back again to having healthy conversations, and that's something that I wanted to just bring out for everyone, and I'm calling myself out too. I know as I was, in my younger time, I was growing up, I consider myself being a passive aggressive person. I held things in, and so I know that as women, we tend to hold things in and not express how we feel. So in order to have healthy conversations, we have to identify who we are, ourselves, our personality traits. How do we conversate? Because when it's good is good. And, we have all of these endorphins flying around, and it's all great. But then when it comes down to really, when there's things that are happening, and you can't communicate it because you stuff it inside. Yeah, as a society, have us stuffing things inside for some reason. You have to, figure that out for yourself. And I, just edge for that. I'm Renee. I am a clinical scientist, clinical research strategist. And the two domains that I have here, I am promoting for health equity. So please check them out. These domains or these websites have to do with our community getting information and resources to help us. Thank you.
Thank you, Renee. Dr. Angeline?
Whew, that was another video to watch. This, as everyone said, this was a great conversation. I'm with my girl Deb. She said they're engineers. I was thinking architects. So we're gonna put them together, and they're gonna have 2 new titles if they want to use them. And I just think that most of these people, I question whether or not they're trying to go viral with some of this stuff that they're saying. One of my thoughts is too, we talked about plan. This is why it's also important to know who you're saying yes and I do to before you even step into a marriage, before you even have the kids, right? Know who you signing up for. Do they value you? Do you have the same thought processes? These conversations, as we've said before, are so vital and so useful around planning. Even when you have your children, most oftentimes we might have like godparents, 1 or 2 sets of godparents. Make sure, like, have conversations with them. What are they able to do? What are they able to contribute? Again, going back to that community, going back to that planning. I am Dr. Angeline Dean. You see, as everyone else said, my website is here. Social media, you can generally find me on Dr. Angeline Dean, #disruptor. And thank you for the conversation.
Thank you, Dr. Angeline. So my final thoughts, it takes a special person to basically sacrifice what you have or what you want to do in life to stay at home, to raise your children. It takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of effort, and it also takes a lot from you because you're suppressing things that your goals, your dreams, your aspirations. And so I really think that there needs to be conversations with your partner in terms of what this looks like. And then also people need to understand that things change. So when the children are when they're toddlers, it's going to be different than when they're teenagers. And I think that we have to have those crucial conversations, and we need to have them regular, and we need to have them often. So my name is Dominique Morgan, and you can find me on all social media platforms at the Whitmore Group. So today was a great conversation, and I'm just grateful to have you guys all here. So this isn't about ranking jobs. It's about honesty. It's caregiving removes income and limits financial options. It deserves a real money conversation in value instead of just how hard work looks. It's about what it costs. If you want to keep up with us and if you want to be alerted about what is happening with Fly Nubian Money, you can text Queens to 87948. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we will see you guys next time.